So if I see a document that is well presented, something that is very easy for me to scan, I can really pick up a lot of words from that document, which resonates with what I'm looking for. All right. But now when like it's all over, definitely I will not be able to pick up some things, all right, because it will be more destructive, and I'm like, okay, so where should I look? Should I look here? Should I look here? Right? And then you've also asked something about ATS. So yes, people still do the manual, like the manual shortlisting, all right? So not all companies have that software. And how you can differentiate, like if your CV is going to pass through the ATS or if it's going to straight to the recruiter's eyes, is when you're asked to
Careers with Nelly, and welcome back to another video. In today's conversation, we are going to have a very interesting conversation, guys, about CVs. I get asked quite often in my social media platforms, in the videos, through the comment sections, in the videos here on YouTube. People are asking me, or rather my audience keep on asking, how can they write a good CV? What is a good CV? What should a good CV contain? What shouldn't be in a good CV? And just so many general questions about a CV. And I thought, because I'm here to produce content that will really add value to you, I thought, why not bring somebody an expert who will help us to answer these questions. So guys, if you're finding yourself in this channel for the first time, you're definitely in the right place, because in this channel we are all about having conversations around job search strategies, career development, and I bring in different professionals to have meaningful workplace conversations. And if you're a returning viewer, I'm quite glad to know that this channel has genuinely added value to you. So in today's conversation, I am having an expert in the house. My guest today is a career coach. She is a HR consultant, and she is an expert CV writer. She has worked with so many job seekers to help them model their CVs to what has actually gotten them those dream jobs. So guys, help me to welcome my guests in the studio, who is going to take us through this conversation, which I can say has been a long-awaited conversation. Grace, how are you?
Yay! I'm really excited to be here. Oh, Nelly, you're very good at what you do. I'm really admiring you, and you're doing fantastic. I love it.
Thank you. So welcome, and it's quite interesting. You're equally doing an amazing job. I follow
Thank
your content
you.
talking about CVs. I'm actually been in some of your WhatsApp groups.
Yay!
Yeah, so when my audience actually asked me about CVs, I said I actually had you at the top of my mind.
Yeah.
So I'm happy to have you for this conversation.
Thank
so just
you.
give me a chance, just before we get started, just to introduce yourself to the audience. Who is Grace Akoth, and what do you do?
All right, so I am Grace Akoth, as you've heard. I'm a HR consultant, and I also do career coaching. This is something that I'm very passionate about, and I've done it for over 5 years now. And so what I do, I work with organizations to give them HR consultancy services, and I also do work with individuals in terms of helping them to draft their resume. And I do that by actively collaborating with them, Nelly, because I feel like through collaboration, we can really bring out the best in them. So yes, that is what I am, and that's what I do, which I'm very passionate about.
Thank you. And I think that was just going to be my first question to start to kickstart this conversation, is on how you got yourself to career coaching, how you got yourself to begin with working with job seekers on modeling, or rather helping them craft their CVs.
Yeah.
I just want to hear a bit of that story, how you landed yourself here.
Yeah, actually, I'll also include HR and why HR. Okay, I think I saw your post recently on LinkedIn. I was like, Nelly, you're talking about me.
Oh,
yeah, so I saw it. And I was like, oh, wow, that's really interesting, because of how I also found myself in the HR field. So how I found myself in a HR field, so immediately after high school, and then there is what's next, which is definitely going to university or colleges. And I chose HR. Reason being, I'm very embarrassed to say this. Reason being, I felt that it was the easiest thing to do, Nelly. Can you imagine? I felt like it was the easiest thing to do, because personally, I don't like hard things. I don't like things that will make me.
You don't like struggling.
Yes, I don't like struggling, and I know a lot of people. I like soft life, and I know a lot of people can resonate with that. Yeah. So I chose HR thinking that it's going to be very easy, thinking it's all about hiring and firing, which up to date a lot of people still think that way, which it's not, I guarantee you. So that's how I landed myself in HR, and definitely in HR. So how I specialized it to career development or career coaching is because of the recruitment bit. So like in HR is very general, and I felt more drawn towards recruitment and career coaching. And you can imagine, I used to see like a lot of CVs when you're doing shortlisting and all that. And I could see that a lot of people are really struggling to really represent themselves or even articulate what they do. And that's how I thought like, I can use this to educate people and to empower them. So that's how I found myself in what I'm currently doing. Yeah.
So Grace, thank you for that, and I'm happy and at the same time excited just to learn how you came to choose HR.
Yeah.
I want to share my story, which might be more or less the same. Yeah, but I'm happy that I finally, or rather I found love, or I fell in love with the HR.
Yeah.
So I think just to start for the first question for our topic of today on how to write a good CV is just to start us from the basics. Where does one really start from?
Okay.
Maybe let's now address those audience who just stepped out from campus. They want to start looking for a job and they want to start writing a CV. So where can one start from?
All right. So number one, I think just have a good template. And by a good template, I mean something that is very simple. I know we love things that are
fancy.
Yes, fancy and all that, but simplicity, I feel that it also sells a lot. So have a good CV, a good template, and then you can now put in just the basic information, which is personal information, a professional summary. If you're just straight from school, you can write things like your career objectives. All right, since you don't have like much experience and all that. And then now your work experience, which work experience can also include your volunteer work, your internships. I know a lot of people usually don't think it helps, but trust me, it does help. Also like your leadership positions in school. Also include them if you're starting out. But if you are experienced, say for example, you have 10 years of working experience, it's not a must for you to include that in the documents.
So now that you've talked about fancy CVs, I think that's quite that's quite an interesting bit, because I have seen that conversation for some time about decorated or fancy CVs. I've had conversations around CV colors. These are the colors that you should have. You should not have these colors. You should not have these fonts. Will you just talk to us a bit about that? Because when you're also starting, you said you need to have a good template.
Yeah.
So will you just tell us what is a good template? How does a good template look like? And when you talk about fancy, how fancy is so fancy in a CV? And maybe also just mention a bit about colors. Are there specific colors that are recommended for CVs?
Yeah. All right. So if you want, or if you're working in a creative industry, or if you are doing things in marketing or digital, yes, you can add color, but sparingly. Don't overdo it, because I feel like when you overdo it, Nelly, it will now be destructive to the person who is reading it. So when you're adding color, you can add the subtle colors. Don't add things like color pink. I feel like it's too out there. It's too screaming, it's very shouting, okay? So you can add very subtle colors. And then when it comes to like fonts, I usually recommend the standard fonts. So standard fonts are fonts like Arial, Times New Roman. Avoid the fonts that are a bit italic, the ones that are slanting a bit. So avoid that, because at the end of the day,
decorative.
yeah, so just use simple fonts, which I highly recommend the standard font, which are some examples: Arial and Times New Roman, or even Calibri. Yeah.
So you've mentioned maybe one color being color, for instance, pink. You say that would be quite shouting. Is there any other color that you will find as a recruiter? You see, or rather you look at so many CVs from your own experience? Are there other colors that you find really makes a CV look weird?
I think pink is the one that really stood out for me, because I'm like, oh wow, this guy is really bold. And when I say that, I don't mean it in a positive way. I mean like, oh wow, it's very destructive. Okay. So I feel like what I can think of at the moment: pink, red, such like. So if you're using color, use very subtle colors. You can use gray, you can use tint, yeah, such colors.
And another question would be, we always told that a recruiter, I don't know, takes the first 8 seconds or the first, I don't know, 1 minute just to make a decision on your CV.
Yeah.
So I know in most advanced companies, people would use ATS, that is the applicant tracking system, which we will discuss a bit of in this conversation. But of course, there's still manual work around around shortlisting, where CVs are still being looked at just by human beings, that is the recruiters. So how long would it take to make a judgment?
Very few seconds, to be honest, just as you have said, because again, presentation is very key. All right. So if I see a document that is well presented, something that is very easy for me to scan, I can really pick up a lot of words from that document, which resonates with what I'm looking for. All right. But now when like it's all over, definitely I will not be able to pick up some things. All right, because it will be more destructive, and I'm like, okay, so where should I look? Should I look here? Should I look here? Right? And then you've also asked something about ATS. So yes, people still do the manual, like the manual shortlisting. All right. So not all companies have that software. And how you can differentiate, like if your CV is going to pass through the ATS, or if it's going to straight to the recruiter's eyes, is when you're asked to upload, be sure that it's going to pass through the ATS system. But when you're asked to send it to a specific email address, again, it's going to straight to the human being. And it's human nature, Nelly. Like if your CV is very congested, I won't read it, to be honest. I want something that is very easy for me. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's I think that's quite interesting. And guys, you just heard from the expert herself that if your CV is too crowded, it will honestly be hard to look at, because at the end of the day, there's a human being sitting somewhere having to look at more than hundreds of CVs, just to make a decision of picking one person, 2, or even less people. So you really get clearly how having a presentable, the bit of presentation which I think you mentioned, being very organized, having a presentable document is important when making these decisions. So my next question is, I would just want you to speak to us about some of the common errors.
Okay.
Yeah, because I did a video recently on some of the things to remove from your CV, and most of the comments from that video, or most of the reactions when I shared that video, people were really agreeing, and I even met somebody and she told me, oh, I watched your video and the first thing I went to remove from my CV was referred.
Yeah.
So maybe you'll just talk to us a bit about what are some of the common errors that you see in CVs that you really wish job seekers would remove from their CVs.
Yeah. Oh, I have a lot, but I think I can mention few. All right. So number one, don't include your date of birth. Nelly, imagine up to date, people still include their DOB, that is date of birth, in their CV. So I find that to be irrelevant. So just omit that from your CV, okay? And also your postal address, okay? Like say house number 54, Nairobi, Kitengela, all those things. So don't include that. That I find it to be very irrelevant. Another thing that can be omitted, when it comes to referees, I'm usually, so this is my state of rule. So how I say it is, only provide referees when you have been requested to. If you haven't been requested for a referee, then don't include it in your CV. So only include it when an employer asks you for it. Yeah.
So only provide it upon request.
Exactly.
And maybe just to take you back a bit, you've talked about date of birth, you've talked about address. You've talked about also the referees. What's your reason behind that? Why wouldn't you want people to include it in the CV?
I find that information to be very personal, because you can imagine if you give out your house number and that person is not legit, and then you just find someone knocking at your door. That's very strange. Okay. And when it comes to date of birth, because I feel like it can cause biasness, and it can work for you or it can work against you. Yeah. So those are some of the reasons. And for referees, it's very interesting, because yesterday I was having a session with a client, and she told me, because I hadn't included the referees, it was like, oh, thank God you haven't. No, she was like, thank God you haven't included the referees. And I asked her, oh, why? Because a lot of people usually ask me like, oh, I have realized that you haven't included referees. So what's the reason behind that? And she told me she was glad that I didn't include, because it has happened to her one time that they called the referee for an interview instead of her. And she's the one who had applied for the job. So again, it can either work for you or work against you. Yeah.
Thank you. I think I really agree with you. And just to add on what you've said, especially about age, you see, even though sometimes companies don't put, but some job adverts actually have, we're looking for somebody who is 30 to 35.
Oh, yeah.
And I know because of some aspects of discrimination, some people wouldn't put it, because we are really not allowed to discriminate on age.
Yeah.
But you'll agree with me that age really matters. There are some jobs that are specific to a certain age.
I definitely agree.
Yeah.
I definitely agree.
You find that when you put your DOB, so somebody can actually say, no, say this person is too old for the job.
Exactly. And it has actually happened.
While you can actually do that job. So it's quite important that you don't put it in the CV. And when you go for that interview, you're not going to sell the age, but you're going to sell the experience. And people, they'll actually be able to tell that you can do the job.
Exactly.
Good. So another question, maybe the next thing I want us to discuss is on the different parts of a CV. Maybe you'll just walk us through the different parts from the top to the bottom. Then just tell us, what do we need to have in these different segments or other different parts of a CV? All
right. So when it comes to like the content of the CV, because that's basically what you're talking about, right? And I think I had also mentioned this earlier. So you can start with your personal information. So personal information, make sure at the top you have your name, phone number, email address where they can reach you. All right. You can include your region. If you're from Nairobi, yeah, that you can include. Just don't be very specific. All right. Like including your house door or all that. And then after that, now you can go and create a professional summary. So you can just summarize your work experience. If you have, say, 5 years of work experience, summarize it. And I like telling people, Nelly, to put it in bullet points, because I feel like when you have them in bullet point, it's very easy for someone to read compared to when it is in paragraph form. So make sure you write them in bullet points and you keep them short and concise. And again, remember the main function of the summary is to make the recruiter or the person who is reading your document to be hooked. So that's what we want to do when it comes to the summary part, all right? And then from there, now you can add your skills. For skills, add, a lot of people just add the technical skills, which I feel it's a bit unfair and not good, okay? So add technical skills, yes, but also include your soft skills and also tools that you are familiar with. If you are familiar with in a certain software, you can include that. If you are familiar with, say, things like Zoom, include that. If you are familiar with MS Office, include that, okay? Because some of the recruiters nowadays look for people who have experience when it comes to those specific tools, especially if the role is remote, okay? Because when the role is remote, they usually need such tools just for efficiency purposes, okay? So that's about the skills section. And then after that, definitely include your work experience. So in your work experience, how you are going to formulate your statements, because again, nearly a lot of people usually just write their responsibilities. Oh, I used to schedule meetings, I used to do this and this. I like telling people that is good, and yes, it's what you are doing, but also try as much as possible to make those statements impactful. Okay.
So how do you do that? I'm quite interested in that.
So how you can make your statement impactful is by adding value, and how you can add value is by quantifying the achievements that you're doing, all right? So say, for example, if your work was to schedule interviews or schedule meetings in general, you can add that it also increased efficiency, all right? And you can even add 20% efficiency, all right? It will look more impactful and valuable, all right? And it will make the employer curious, okay? Because again, your CV should make the employer a bit curious, so that he or she calls you, all right, just to find out more about you, all right? So that's in the work experience, and also include action verbs. I don't like people who use action verbs like assist. I feel like, yes, you assisted, but add some weight, all right? Don't just say you used to. Yeah, add some flesh. Yes, you did assist, but add some weight to it. So avoid that action verb. So you can use action verbs like managed, led, accomplished, such words. I feel like it also makes the statement impactful again. Yeah.
And maybe now that you've mentioned action words, I think there was an argument, or there's a certain post I read where that content creator was talking about overuse, especially of the action words and the buzzwords in a CV. Maybe just tell us a bit about that, because I also find that, I think I agreed partly with her, that sometimes you can find a CV that word like managed, accomplished, and I don't know what, delivered, and so on and so forth is overused. So how, maybe just talk to us about that. At what point will I say that this person is overused? And I think, or I believe what happens if I'm able to look at a CV and say there's an overuse of a certain aspect, then it ceases from being an authentic document. Yeah, and I would even say this person, maybe their CV was done by AI or by somebody. So how do you balance so that your CV doesn't come out like you're overusing or
a certain action verb,
too generic?
So the thing is, like, you should have in which I have a list of action verbs, okay, which there are very many, over 50 action verbs that someone can use. So if you have used, for example, managed, don't use it like 3 times in your CV or 4 times in your CV. You can decide to use another action verb. So that's what you're saying, like, you don't really overuse a certain action verb. So make sure that you have a list of action verbs, okay? And then now you can be picking the one that resonates with you. Again, I usually find some action verbs to be very difficult to even read, Nelly. There's this one, is it orchestrated? Something like that, yeah? So I tell people to also use action verbs that You see the way we usually talk? Make sure that those
Not
words,
jargonish.
exactly, those words you can actually include in
In a normal
conversations. Yes, in a
conversation.
normal conversations.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so maybe you've talked about the professional summary, you've talked about the skills part, and you've mentioned something which is really key for me, that most people people focus more on technical skills.
Yeah.
I am a big believer on soft skills,
Exactly.
actually, and I always say if I had two people and one of them is heavy on technical skills but lacks soft skills, honestly, I would pick the person who is heavy on soft skills.
Exactly.
Because my belief is that you can train anyone to do anything, but
True.
you can never train on most soft skills, because
Exactly.
there I would say these social skills, some of them really you can't teach somebody on.
True.
So you've also mentioned about the experience. You've also mentioned about the experience and how somebody should list them in their CV. Just on the experience bit before we go to the next part, there's when somebody's listing the experience, I find that most people put it more put the experience bit to be more task oriented. While the right way, from my perspective, also as a recruiter, is that it should be more of achievement oriented, like you've said. So maybe just, I know you've touched a bit on it by saying somebody needs to add, make it quantifiable, by including numbers and having very realistic achievements. How else can someone make that experience, that work experience part, more achievement oriented and less task oriented?
I think it's just by showing the value that you added. I know some values can't be quantified, but you can just mention. So say, for example, the value was increase in sale. You can just include increase in sale if you are not very sure about the quantifiable bit. Because again, I tell people, do not lie on your CV. That's usually my start. Like, if you feel like you can't really explain a statement, do not include it. You can, it's better for you to leave the number bit, but just say that it led to an increase in sale or brand awareness, maybe. Yeah.
Good, thank you. So maybe just after the work experience, what is the next part of the CV?
All right. So definitely your education. Okay. So for people who are more experienced, personally, I like putting their education at the bottom, okay, and their skills and achievements at the top. But if you are just a recent graduate, definitely I recommend that you put your education at the top, all right, of your CV.
Education comes first after the professional summary, maybe?
Yes, yes. So that's how I usually do it. So it differs with the experience that someone has, all right? So definitely include your education and be specific. So if you did a master's in strategic management, you can write master's in strategic management, which institution, and the years, okay? And when it comes to years, don't write just 2013 to 2015, because I feel like that is not specific. Like, if I'm going through that CV, it won't give me, because I don't know, was it January 2013, was it December 2013? So it won't give me like an estimate. Yes, exactly. So always include the timelines in terms of months and years. Yeah. Okay. So, and then after education, you can add your certifications if you have, that is. So if you have certifications, if you are part of any membership, you can also include that there. All right. And then for people who are starting out in their career, I would also include their hobbies. All right, for people who are starting out in their careers.
We need to have a bit of hobbies, because I think it's quite interesting. Yeah, but you can continue.
Yeah, so for people who are starting out in their careers, I'd also include hobbies. But for people who are experienced, I wouldn't include hobbies. Reason being, again, I really want your CV to be straight to the point, all right? Concise, short, straight to the point. I don't want a lot of stories, okay? So that's the main reasons as to why I would include I would not include hobbies for someone who is who has a lot of experience. Yeah.
So what would somebody be missing if they don't have hobbies in their CV?
If they don't have hobbies in the CVs, it's okay because it's actually optional. It's not something that is a must for you to have. It's very optional. And then for people who are still in school and you're applying for a certain role, the hobbies that you're going to include in your CV, make sure that it resonates with the job that you are applying to. Okay. So for example, if you are applying to a social media marketing role, for example, okay, you can include something like photography, production. Those are things that you just enjoy doing. So make sure they are also very relatable to the positions that you are applying to. I like hobbies personally, which again I mentioned it's optional, but the thing is it gives someone a holistic approach of who you are. Like it's also, I feel like it shows personality. Yeah. So that's why I would include hobbies. Yeah.
I think that it's really important. And one thing I always believe about having hobbies in a CV, like you said, it's optional. And when you have them, well, it's not bad. And the good thing is that it reveals more about you just beyond a profession.
Exactly.
Because I could be in HR, I could be in marketing, but one of my hobbies listed in my CV maybe is cooking.
Just good.
Yeah, one of my hobbies is dancing.
Yeah.
So then, even though I know this might not directly influence or rather directly help me in my job, but that is who I am.
Exactly.
Yeah. So one thing I like about it is that it reveals, or rather it presents authenticity.
True.
But another thing about hobbies is can also bring irrelevance. For instance, if it is, especially if it is the direct opposite of what maybe the job wants.
Yeah.
So what I always advise people is that it really depends with which industry you're going to. For instance, if I was looking for a job maybe in the media, for instance, and I list that even if I was just looking for a job as HR in the media, and I list that one of my hobbies is videography, or one of my hobbies is photography, that's a huge skill for the media industry.
True.
So there's a lot of relevance. So me, I think I really agree with you, and maybe what I would just advise someone is that if you had to put the hobbies in your CV, then ensure that it is aligned to that what that company needs, or what will be helpful in that job.
Exactly.
Even if it's not part of the required skills for the job, right?
I agree.
Good. So thank you. We're almost getting to the end of this conversation. It's getting a little bit hotter, but I'm liking every bit of it.
Yeah.
So I know there are different types, different format of a CV. I had asked you that question before, but I would just like to emphasize on that, because one thing that I find is that most people, or rather sometimes it happens that a good CV is seen, or rather a good CV is judged by its format. You talked about the flashiness, the colors, and all that. So sometimes I also find people could focus more on the format and forget the content.
Oh, content is very key. Content
So how do you
is...
get the balance? Because you know, the moment you just open your email, then the CV looks so fantastic, and you're like, good. So how do you really balance? Because I understand recruitment, or rather shortlisting, has its own biases that sometimes can happen without you even knowing. So as a recruiter, how do you balance? I think you understand what I mean. Being very you're getting over the moon with the format of the CV, and even saying sometimes somebody will really have a very good content. But how do you get the balance? All
right, so I feel like content should actually be one of the major things, because again, remember, we said that not every company can afford the ATS system, all right? And if that happens, the ATS software rather, if that happens, it means that it's going straight to the human eye, right? And the human eye, probably the main focus, definitely presentation is key, but also the content, okay? So the content, make sure that you have the qualifications that they're looking for, the skills, the accomplishments, and the values that you're going to add in the organization. Yeah, so always, I strongly emphasize on the content. On the content. Yeah, that's what key. Yeah. And then now, if the organization is now using the ATS system, again, focus on keywords that are in the job description. So make sure that at least 80% of the keywords that are in the job description also reflects in your CV or your document. Yeah.
Apart from having the keywords in the job description at 80% in the CV, what else can somebody do to make sure that their CV meets the ATS requirements?
All right. So another thing that you're supposed to do other than the keywords, so make sure you avoid tables. Tables. I know a lot of people use formats that have a lot of tables. Yeah. So avoid a lot of tables because the ATS system will not be able to read through. Another thing that you can avoid, again, the fancy wording. Remember the way I was saying, like, you need to keep it simple when it comes to the font that you're going to use. So make sure that the font that you're going to use is very easy to read and someone can scan, including the ATS system. So another thing, graphs. So avoid graphs. I know a lot of people, especially if you are in the finance space, you love including pie charts there, bar graph there, and it makes the CV look colorful and all. I get that, but if you're using the ATS system, unfortunately the ATS won't be able to read your document, and you might be filtered out, which is so unfair because you might actually have what they're looking for, but because of how you have presented your work, the document won't pass through the ATS. Yeah.
Good. So just my last question will just be helping us to get a summary of all this conversation. Now, as a recruiter and as a CV expert, what would you just tell us then? What in your own opinion are the bare minimum that a CV should have for us, or rather for you to consider is a good CV?
Definitely something that is very easy to read. Imagine not even a lot of technical things, just something that is very easy for a recruiter to read. That's what I would really urge people to do. So use templates that are very simple. Don't over exaggerate. Simplicity sells again.
What about maybe how it captures your skills and experience?
Oh, definitely. So make sure, again, it has all those elements that we spoke about. So ensure it has all those elements. You don't include the irrelevant information that we just spoke about. For referees, include it at your own risk. I'm kidding. It's optional again. It can work for you or it can work against you. But for date of birth, home address, do not include. Again, make sure that your statements in the work experience are very impactful so that the employer can see the value that you are going to add in their organization. Because again, employers, Nelly, they just want to see what values are you going to bring in our organization. They don't really care about your day-to-day responsibilities because, as you mentioned, some of these things someone can learn on the job. Yeah. So just show value, show enthusiasm and all that. Yeah.
It's been an amazing conversation, and Grace, once again, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for having me.
Guys, you can follow Grace on her social media platforms. I'll be leaving the link to her platforms on the description of this video. So thank you also for watching this video till the end, and I'll be quite interested to learn and hear from you what topic and who do you think I should bring on this show next time. So as always, if you've not subscribed to this channel, consider subscribing so you keep up with our conversations in this channel that are all about helping you to build a successful and a rewarding career. Till next time, thank you for watching.
Bye.
Bye.